Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we have another special guest. We have a player who won the most recent Desafio Latam Tour, got top four in the Victory Road tournament the previous week, and also is the most expensive player in NPA. We have AuraRayquaza, also known as Tharan Birdie. How are you doing, Tharan?
Hi, yeah. Thank you for having me on the channel. Yeah,
It's
past
great to
couple
have you.
weekends have been pretty good for me.
Yeah, you have had a heck of a last couple of weeks. But can you tell me a little bit about yourself for those who don't know?
So I'm 23 from the UK. I started playing in VGC in 2018-ish, and then got an invite to Worlds in 2019 solely off locals. Quite funnily, and it was really in 2020 that I started putting effort in, like proper, time into improving. And I cut the Bochum regionals at the start of the format, and then I guess another notable result was my finish in the Champions Cup. I finished 11th, and then the two results this past weekend. And yeah,
Yeah,
other than that, I got
definitely.
picked up for MPA. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you were on the NPA champions last year as well, and
yeah,
got picked up again by the Blizzards. So that's very exciting. I know the puppies had you very high on our draft board, and but you went for a lot. You are
yeah. It may be
possibly
too much.
well. Your results these past couple of weeks really have shown that you really might be one of the best players in the world right now. And I'm excited to hear all about the team that you use because it is a very unique take on the Kyogre teams that we've been seeing. And so we see that you got top four in the Victory Road Tour and you won the Desafio Latam Tour with this Kyogre team. Can you tell me a little bit about the team and the team building process and how you came to this build as compared to something more like the standard Tornogre builds?
Okay, so from the start of Series A, I think everyone realized that Tornado was probably quite good. And something I've been thinking about for quite a long time is a slower kind of Kyogre team. Something that not necessarily, it has like a slow, maybe a trick room mode on it, but I could never quite get it going. I never really got the idea off the ground. Most of my ideas had Kartana still over Ferrothorn. I thought it was like incredible with Kyogre. Um, I loved Dragapult, so I'd been trying it out, but I just couldn't get it to work because of Zacian and Calyrex just making Dragapult not the fastest Pokemon anymore. Um, it wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 days before the Victory Road tournament that I played a user on Showdown. I think his name was Gargantuan Beast, whoever he may be, and he was using this sit, and Ferrothorn and Porygon 2 just made the team look really like great, and it reminded me a lot of the team Gabriel Agati used in, I think it was the first Players Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it kind of reminded me of that team that can really, turn up the pace when needed, but also had that really slow kind of mode with Ferrothorn and Porygon. And it was something I really liked the idea of. I took the six, stuck some sets on that I thought made sense, and I went into Victory tournament basically for practice to see if the team was any good, and it performed well above my expectations.
Yeah, I mean, you got all the way to top four. I know that you beat Alex in Swiss as well, who got second place.
Yes.
Really, really strong performance. And then I know that you made some changes to the team before the Desafio Latam tour that you won. And so this is
Yeah.
the updated paste. So what are some things that you learned from that tournament about the team?
Okay, so both myself and Oliver Eskilin were using the team in the Victory Road tournament. He unfortunately missed top cut. On his winning in. But what we noticed from that is we lost 5 sets in Swiss, but for the most part we beat those opponents in top cut. So we both lost to Len in Swiss, but we he was using Tornado with Landorus, and we beat him in, or I beat him in the top cut up with some help from his game planning, and then especially Eric Rios. I probably wouldn't have beaten him if we hadn't played him and learned how Eric played the matchup. And the only problem matchup was we found was Lapras Zacian with Amoonguss, simply because we couldn't really break the Lapras quickly enough. So for the Desafio LATAM tournament, I decided getting rid of Origin Pulse and Ice Beam on Kyogre for the kind of better combo of Scald and Thunder, because it allows Kyogre to trade with Lapras in terms of Dynamaxing, and also you can click a water move onto the generally water weak team of Incineroar, Landorus, and Zacian without healing Lapras in the same turn, which was quite nice. But for the most part, it was the same.
Yeah, I know that I was watching the VODs of Genius when he won the JUX9 tour in the first weekend, and his Lapras game plan, because that cut was just filled with Laprasization, and his game plan was very Kartana-centric. And so without the Kartana, I'm sure you had to develop newer ways to defeat these teams. But the Ferrothorn also is such a strong Pokemon with Kyogre as in terms of forming that bulkier core. Can you talk me through the Pokemon on the team and the individual sets and what they do?
Okay, so I guess to start with, we'll go with Kyogre. Actually, no, let's go with Dragapult first. Dragapult's kind of really the centerpiece of the team in terms of how it plays. So the relatively simple spread actually was kind of thought out. Basically, max speeds with Adamant allows Dragapult to get an Airstream boost and then outspeeds every Venusaur in Sun, even if they're timid, which was really nice. Because it means that Dragapult is more of a standalone Sun matchup rather than having to need to switch Kyogre in to outspeed the Venusaurs. Moves wise, Dive is really the standout here. It's amazing in Groudon matchups because you can set up an Airstream or a Tailwind, as I like to call it sometimes, and then Rain Dance with Dragapult, almost in the same vein as Tornadus from VGC 19, and really keep the pressure on with Kyogre. And it also allows for game plans where Kyogre might not be amazing. They're rare, but there are some where you still keep the water type coverage and being able to set rain for Ferrothorn, which is really nice. In terms of Adamant versus Jolly, I was really set on Adamant because I used it in Players Cup 2, Adamant Dragapult, and it's just so strong. Also, Dragapult's always going to be the fastest Pokemon, like in most games, unless there's a Zacian or a Calyrex. But even Jolly's not outspeeding those, so you really have to rely on Electro Webs to get above it. So Adamant just felt like the correct choice.
It definitely Dragapult. It felt like it'd been power crept since like Series 5 when it was really strong, and so running Adamant is another way to give it a little bit more of an attack boost that it kind of needs to keep up with the power level of this format. But on top of that, I think that it's a really unique choice, but it's really strong because of its dragon typing and the lack of fairy types in the format in general. It allows you to it doesn't have those weaknesses that it used to, and the dragon typing is suddenly a very good defensive typing because of all of the fire moves sitting or all the water moves, and just like you look at your Kyogre, you can't really hit something like Dragapult with it. And so, like you said, it's really good into the rain matchup, the sun matchup. That was my experience when I was trying out Dragapult for myself. And then the other thing is, now that you don't have a Kartana on the team, Kyogre really benefits from those max Airstream boosts, and this is just another Pokemon that can give those boosts. So Dragapult really seems like a very cool choice, a very unique choice, and also like a very strong choice on these type of Kyogre teams.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, it's really quite incredible into Tornado matchups specifically. It usually can't be touched by the Kyogre. Even if they have Ice Beam, they probably have to max to trade effectively. It can Wormwind Kartana, and it just trades quite nicely damage-wise there. Regieleki can't Electro Web it, which is fantastic. And for the most part, it can do decently versus the tech options. So stuff like Among Us, it can airstream, and Landorus, it has Max Geyser for, or Max Whirlwind. Also, Incineroar just gets one shot by Max Geyser, which is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, and it really does form a huge part of the game plan against Rain next to Regieleki. So,
yeah, and so
yeah.
tell me about the Regieleki. That seems like a pretty standard set, but it's something that's kind of come on and off of the standard Kyogre teams. But why'd you choose to put it on this team?
Really, it feels like the only way to make Dragapult worth running, at least on teams which rely on speed control, because Kyogre is not exactly the fastest Pokemon, and to get Trick Room up is sometimes quite tough, especially now that a lot more Pokemon are running Taunt, or they're just stronger and can hit Porygon 2 harder. So Regieleki gives a really nice and quick way to just Electroweb stuff and get Dragapult up to speeds, basically. The set, the moves are quite simple. Electroweb's definitely the most clipped move because it's just incredible on a Pokemon this fast. And Focus Sash was my choice for the Desafio Latam tournament, but I've been thinking about Magnet a lot, and I ran that in the Victory Road tournament. He also decided he liked Magnet more for the Agosini's Battle Train, which he won. And it's just Magnet makes Regieleki a nicer Dynamax option. Although Regieleki is still really strong, even with a Sash if it decides to max. Hondas are nice because you've got a Kyogre, and it really makes up for that loss of the Magnet when you're maxing. So Magnet Thunderbolt and Sash Thunder are around the same base power. The Sash is really nice once again in Tornoga matchups, specifically because you can be much more lenient with your Regieleki. So you can just Electroweb turn on rather than needing to protect to get an Airstream boost. And then max speed feels really great in this format because there's a lot of pranks of Tailwind. And Regieleki, after it Electrowebs or gets a speed boost from max Airstream, it just outspeeds everything in Tailwind. So it can Electroweb a second time, and then your team really starts to put the pressure on because their Tailwind is neutralized.
Yeah, definitely. Pokemon like Dragapult and Regieleki are only powerful when they are the fastest thing on the field, and the two of them together basically guarantee that they are always going to be the fastest thing on the field one way or another. So that definitely makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Next, I guess we'll go into Kyogre. Once again, a relatively simple set. The only interesting point is the spread. I was really toying between three different speed stats for Kyogre. There's 120, which outspeeds Thunderous at +1, 126 for Cinderace, and 134 for Spectria or Tapu Koko. And I obviously didn't want it to be max speed because I'd like it to have some kind of presence in Trick Room. And so I settled on 120 speeds, and I've not really needed to go any quicker. Sometimes it's a bit disappointing to max Airstream or Electroweb as Spectria, and they still get to attack first. But for the most part, Spectria is not the most common Pokemon, so I've not been too worried. And in terms of moves, Water Spout's just ridiculously strong. Scold was nice because I originally had Origin Pulse, but particularly in Lapras matchups, when you've taken a hit and you want to be able to attack the Landorus or the Incineroar. First of all, you hit all the time, which is nice, and second of all, you don't give the Lapras the Water Absorb, which was actually one of my losses in Swiss in the Victory Road tournament. I went for Origin Pulse, I missed the Incineroar, and I healed the Lapras, which was just double trouble. And then Thunder was originally Ice Beam to hit Among Us a bit harder, but honestly, Water Spout does the job, and Thunder really helps versus Lapras particularly, because sometimes against Life or Lapras, you really have to switch around and play it super slowly. Thunder allows you to sometimes just Dynamax your Kyogre as they Dynamax their Lapras and really hit it hard, rather than having only Ice and Water moves to trade with it, which don't trade with it at all.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the dynamic where as Tornogre or Kyogre teams and Lapdog become two of the biggest threats in the metagame, they've been kind of trading techs to beat each other. And so this seems like another really strong development where you do really, it seems like you're using Thunder to hit the Lapras, and then you really don't want to heal it back up after you've hit it. Whereas the older versions didn't really mind healing it back up because they were kind of saving the Lapras for last.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't do that without Kartana. I can't leave it around for much longer because it hits. Its ice moves hit a lot of the team. Well, Freeze Dry hits all of the team. And Hydro Pump is great for Incineroar and stuff. So I really need to deal with it in good time. Not necessarily knock it out while it's Dynamax, but not leave it the whole game. Just being able to attack. I guess moving on to the Ferrothorn, since it's a nice segue onto as to why I don't have Kartana. Ferrothorn is great. It's an incredible. It just wins games sometimes it's really not supposed to. It, funnily enough, has beaten a lot of Zacians that I've faced, mainly because with Rain Up and the huge pressure from Dragapult and Kyogre sat next to it, it can really find times to set up that iron defense, and sometimes teams just can't answer it at all. Even some teams where they opt for Rock Slide and Precipice Blades on their Groudon, and their Venusaur doesn't have Weather Ball, Ferrothorn can beat some teams, which is just crazy. And just Leech Seed in general is really good at stalling out a lot of these big Dynamax Pokemon, usually the more niche options like Dialga and Palkia. Rather than having to set up iron defenses, you can just Leech Seed and burn through their max turns so quickly. It's really nice as well for the Trick Room moders, in that I can set up Porygon in a good spot. I can get Trick Room. I can be clicking Water Spouts and have iron defense going, so that even when Trick Room ends, I've got an unkillable Ferrothorn.
Yeah, you mentioned Agati's Players Cup 1 team that had the Porygon 2 Dragapult and then the really bulky Firewater Grass Core with Incineroar and Ferrothorn, and now you just kind of replaced the Primarino with something a lot stronger in Kyogre. But for Ferrothorn, it is a grass type, but doesn't have a grass move. Did you ever miss having a grass type attack on it?
So the funny thing about Ferrothorn is that it's actually really bad into Tornogre matchups, as I found, which is odd to think about from a grass steel type, simply because it can't deal with Kyogre really. Like, you can set up iron defenses in front of it, but it's just a constant pressure from Water Spout and Kartana's Sacred Sword on Max Knuckles just makes it really disappointing into Tornogre. But I never actually missed other coverage, because the rest of the team has a good enough plan versus those matchups where I might need to grass move. I have two electric moves, well, two Pokemon that have electric moves for any potential Kyogres. Dragapult's good into water types, and just stuff like Regieleki as well. They're not the bulkiest Pokemon in the world, so I have good options to deal with them. And it means Ferrothorn can't Dynamax as well, but once again, not really a problem because Body Presses are great.
Body Press is really a crazy move. And the other thing about Ferrothorn is that, Ferrothorn is a Pokemon that we've seen on a lot of Palkia teams as well, where it really abused that rain that Palkia could set up. But now you also have another Dragon type with a Water move that can Dynamax and a Kyogre. So you've constantly got Rain Up. And then you don't really have a way to boost its Spadef with like a Max Quake. But you do have stuff like a Porygon 2 with Eerie Impulse to kind of facilitate and and Parting Shot on Incineroar to kind of help soften the blow from those special attacks.
Yeah, that's good point. It's a really important part of some of my game plans against, once again, those odds legendaries like Dialga and Palkia, which you don't see all the time, but when you do see them, they can just rip through teams that are unprepared. And so Ferrothorn is able to soak up a lot of their max moves, but it really needs to help from Parting Shot and Eerie Impulse to really make them useless. And that's a big part of what I do when I'm trying to set up Ferrothorn against those kind of slower teams, is get an Eerie Impulse or a Parting Shot off on their max Pokemon, and then just sit Ferrothorn in front of their whole team and iron defense.
Yeah, it's really cool. I like that Ferrothorn a lot of times feels like a standalone Pokemon where it kind of just like, oh, I'm just going to try to kill all the Ferrothorn answers and then win the game on its own. Whereas now you've kind of made it part of a broader game plan, and I really like that way of building.
I think something else to mention is that it doesn't necessarily need Trick Room, as one might expect. First of all, it's just really bulky on its own, so it can take a lot of attacks. Particularly the spread takes 2 Kyogre's Water Spouts if they're Sea Incense, which is, it resists water, but that's still quite crazy for a Kyogre. Kyogre is really strong. And so a lot of the time I would find I wasn't bringing Porygon 2 to the games, but Ferrothorn was still really good because I had offensive pressure in the next slot. And sometimes if I needed to play it slower, I could just get Incin in and fake out Parting Shot. And Ferrothorn would always be good against faster teams, as well as being able to set up under Trick Room, which was really nice about it.
Yeah, definitely. And so can you tell me about the last 2 Pokemon in your team? Okay,
so the last 2 Pokemon kind of go hand in hand, really. When I was looking at the 6 Pokemon, I realized that I needed Porygon 2 and Incineroar to form an extremely solid plan against Calyrex Shadow teams in particular, because while Dragapult, Regieleki can Electroweb and Max Phantasm them, a lot of the time they're paired up with Indeedee, and that just makes the idea useless. That was really key in terms of their EV spreads. The Porygon 2 set, otherwise, is quite standard for what we've seen in Series 8, where they opt for Foul Play to really get consistent damage against some of the high attack stat legends we see. Even the special ones have sometimes quite high attack stats anyway. So Foul Play is quite good pressure there. And Eerie Impulse, once again, is great for max Pokemon. It always has been. And Incineroar, it's goggles for Amoonguses, basically. But the EV spread particularly is, as you might see, it's really fast. And the idea was that against Calyrex Shadow teams, they often have Thundurus, but I wanted to be able to lead Incineroar into them. And so against the Incineroar Thundurus lead, I can always fake out the Incineroar, and I always have confidence in Roars. So that was the reason behind the Incineroar speed. And the Porygon 2 spread is EV to live pretty much every Thundurus move you could ever hope to face, even at +1. Particularly, this spread lives a Helping Hand, Life Orb Max Knuckle at +1 attack. And so the idea is you lead Incineroar Porygon, and whatever the situation, you can fake out the Thundurus. If they don't max and try and superpower, you fake them out. And if they Dynamax, you're living the attack anyway. And if there's an Incineroar, you can fake that out, but they don't have Helping Hand. So once again, Porygon's living the attack. And so the idea is that you can always guarantee Trick Room. And once you get Trick Room up, Kyogre is going to go crazy.
Yeah, and of course you've got Foul Play, so even though you boosted up the Thundurus, you don't care. You can just hit it really hard.
Exactly.
Foul Play
boosting up the Thundurus actually means I'm stronger.
Yeah, Foul Play is also a cool move against Zacian, where like you mentioned that this is a really important part of your Calyrex game plan, but Shadow Ball doesn't break Zation substitute, and Foul Play does, so that's also really valuable. So and then it also means that you don't actually have to rely on your attacking stats because you don't have a move that is based on those. So you have Trace on Porygon 2 instead. How's that been for you?
Yes, so I've spoken to a few people, and some people love it, some people hate it. I personally I'm a big fan of Trace, especially on this set. Particularly over Analytic, there'd be no need to run download. But Trace is just great because there are so many great abilities in this game, and Porygon 2 can just take them. And Porygon 2 with a good ability, it's already an incredible Pokemon, but with a good ability, it just gets ridiculous. So I guess some examples of the abilities I've traced: Intimidate's a common one, which is nice for Incineroars, and maybe they have a partner that doesn't want to be intimidated. Friend Guard is something I've traced from Clefairy, which is, as you can imagine, sit that next to Kyogre, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that sounds broken.
Yeah, some other things, in particular, Inner Focus. So I faced some Mienshao Calyrex teams, and interestingly, you cannot trace as one. So you're guaranteed to trace partner, and then I've traced Inner Focus so they can't fake me out. Pranks is also an amazing one that I've traced. I love tracing Prankster from Whimsicots and Grimmsnarls because it's really fast eerie impulses and it's incredibly quick recovers, which is just great. So they're some of the abilities you can trace. I think the one downside you might expect is that sometimes you're going to trace bad abilities. Stuff like tracing Drought when you've got your Kyogre out is no fun. Stuff like Defiant, or not Defiant, but tracing Intimidate when there's an opposing Thunderous, sometimes not fun. But realistically, I was thinking about it, and percentage-wise, maybe 5% of the time, it actually is a hard negative. Maybe 50 to 60% of the time, it's usually just quite neutral. Like tracing Transistor or tracing Pressure, stuff like that. And then there's that, 30, 40% of the time where it's a huge positive. And actually, it reminds me of some other great abilities that I've traced. I've traced Steam Engine from Colossals as I've been hit with Max Flare. So I've Porygon 2 gets some max speed. Clear Body is the thing I've traced when I face opposing Dragapults. They can't max Phantasm and drop my defense stats. And funnily enough, I traced Beast Boost once and I took a knockout. And so my Porygon 2 was getting defense boost, which is just so funny.
That's I've been playing a bit with the Elisa's team, which also had a trace Porygon 2, and I've also traced a Steam Engine, and then got hit with a fire move while I set up Trick Room. And so that wasn't nearly as good. But I've also traced like a Lightning Rod in front of a Raichu, and they just suddenly can't Eerie Impulse. So yeah, there's a lot of cool interactions there. And then the rest of the set is pretty standard. And then for the Incineroar, you opted for Taunt and then just a fire coverage move instead of having a dark coverage move as well. Why did you put Taunt on the team?
Really, I just love Taunt Incineroar. It's something I really tried in Series 7 and I just fell in love with it instantly. It's first of all, it's quicker than Amoonguss, so you can switch in on a spore and then taunt it so it can't Rage Powder, or even Turbo Amoongusses can't spore the rest of your team, which is nice. Taunting opposing Porygons, Dusclops, Indeedees, opposing Ferrothorns trying to set up. There's just so much you can taunt. And one of the coolest interactions is because my Incineroar is so quick, in Incineroar mirrors, I can get a fake out first, but then on turn 2, you can taunt the Incineroar as they try and parting shot and almost trap them in because they have to hard switch, and that's often a huge negative rather than parting shot, which is most of the time a big positive for the opponent. Now they have to switch something into maybe a Kyogre's Water Spout or a Dragapult's max move, and that can really set them back.
Yeah, definitely. That also just plays into the dynamic where you have that ridiculous speed stat. And I know
Mm,
another team report we had was Alex Underhill and Justin Burns, where they're a lapdog team, and they I think were running 116 speed EVs on their Incineroar. And they were saying, yeah, we just were outspeeding every other Incineroar that we faced, and now
yeah,
here you are, speed creeping that by like several points. But it
yeah,
just Incineroar is everywhere. We see it like I think it like 7 of top 8 on top cut of both the Victor Road tours of the women's tour.
yeah,
Like
so
it's
good.
it's just always there. And so having the advantage when you're facing other Incineroar is really important. But at some point, there's diminishing returns. I guess you gotta figure out where that trade off is. Um,
Yeah,
but that's always an interesting dynamic. We saw it a lot in 2018 too. So
yeah. It was really nice going knowing that I could enter any tournament with this team and know I had the fastest Incineroar in the tournament, because at some point it just gets stupid to run so much speed that it felt necessary for me, and it really gave me that peace of mind that whenever there's an Incineroar mirror, I know I'm quicker. Um, as you said, there are some times where the returns and the loss of bulk can sometimes be quite disappointing. The defense stat in particular actually is able to live a Zacian's close combat once once you've intimidated it down to neutral. And something I found out, funnily enough, during my set versus Alex Underhill in the Victor Road tournament was that it exactly lives a -1 Calyrex Ice's Max Quake, which was just so convenient and actually came into play. And then the rest of it's just in special defense for, a bit of bulk. But the defense was really useful.
yeah, definitely. That seems like the standard defense stat. And then rather than throwing out
Hmm.
the rest in special defense, you really committed to outspeeding things. And now I guess I got to start running like just max speed Incineroar. And
Yeah, I might have to bump this up a few points if I get to use.
yeah. So you said that you had some more general game plans and then some very specific game plans against specific teams. Yeah. So can you tell me about some of these game plans that you had?
Okay, so I guess before the tournament, the only game plan I really theorized and actually, built the team in mind of was Calyrex Shadow teams. The one I was looking at particularly was Marco Fierro's Calyrex Shadow team that he used to top the ladder, and he's cut a few tournaments with it. So it was Calyrex, Indeedee, Thunderous, Regieleki, Urshifu, and Incineroar. And the game plan there was I don't want to have to bring Dragapult at all. So I lead Porygon to Incineroar into any kind of lead. I've found that almost all of the time they're leading Thunderous plus another Pokemon. And the idea is that you always fake out the Thunderous. Like I said earlier, even if they Dynamax, it doesn't matter because a plus, it's Assault Vest on that team, but even Life Orb is fine. You just live Max Knuckles basically, even at +1. And the partner's usually not strong enough to do the rest of the damage to Porygon. It gets a little bit dicey if you trace and intimidate from their Incineroar while there's a Thunderous on the field, but I actually did that in the one set I played against it, and I still was able to win. And my Porygon 2 lived the attacks. If there's an Incineroar on the field, you fake that out instead. Just because you don't want them to fake out Porygon, you want Trick Room up as quickly as possible. And then once you have Trick Room up, it's just a matter of getting Kyogre in relatively safely, kicking Water Spout a couple of times, Max Geyser once or twice. And I found that Regieleki is the best fourth Pokemon to clean up once Trick Room is finished against like an Urshifu or a low health Calyrex, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Tornogre as well is something that I've played a lot and I figured out what I should be doing. Most of the time it's a Regieleki Dragapult lead, and the idea is that you can protect Max Airstream turn 1 against almost any lead they have. If the Tornadus tries and sets Tailwind, it doesn't matter because Regieleki outspeeds Tornadus, Kartana, and Kyogre at +1 speed, even if they're in Tailwind, so you get an Electro Web off on turn 2, and that means your Dragapult outspeeds everything on their team. And so I found that a lot of the time you can take 2 knockouts and really put pressure on with an Incineroar Kyogre in the back against maybe a Kartana that tries to max. Some kind of adjustments I found, Dragapult Kyogre if you think they're going to lead Incineroar or Mungus or something. But most of the time, Dragapult Regieleki is quite a safe idea. They're the 2 matchups I really prepped as I've gone through practicing with the team. In terms of the rest of the matchups and basically any other team you'll face, the thing I found about the team is that it doesn't really have negative matchups. It has a lot of tough ones, but not tough in the sense that the opponent is advantaged in any way. It's just that you have to play it carefully. As long as you are very careful about your Pokemon and the correct win cons, you should be able to win any kind of game, as I've kind of learned. And that just it just feeds into picking the right Pokemon is hugely important with the team. So some examples are, if I ever see an Amoonguss, regardless of the team, I will never bring Porygon because it's just completely dead weight. Similarly, Ferrothorn is really bad into Tornoga, so I'll never bring that, even if it might look good against Kartana or Delandris or stuff. And so the 2 kinds of cores of the team are, Dragapult Regieleki with Kyogre and something else in the back. And Kyogre Regieleki is a really common lead I found, with the idea of Kyogre and Regieleki in the back. No, not in the back. Dragapult in the back. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Sure.
So kind of a late max, which is really cool. And then Porygon 2 centric modes where I'm bringing Porygon 2 Incineroar, Kyogre, and Ferrothorn are really great too.
Yeah, definitely. With how powerful Kyogre is, it does so much damage to basically everything. It feels like Kyogre teams are basically like figure out how to best position the Kyogre, and you've got so many different ways between like fake out, between 2 to 3 different forms of speed control, so many different ways to figure out how to best put pressure on your opponent with Kyogre. I guess the other 2 matchups that are very notable. You mentioned that the Lapdog was something that you had trouble with originally. And then Sun is probably the other really common team. Both of those have a lot of different variants now, but how did you approach those in team preview?
So with Lapras Ashen kind of teams, you can really bring any combination of the 6 Pokemon depending on the variants. There's not really a bad Pokemon in the matchups. So I guess I'll go through a couple of the ideas I had. The first and most common one, and probably the most well-rounded idea, is Regieleki Kyogre with Incineroar and Ferrothorn in the back. And this is one of my favorite ways to use Ferrothorn. What you kind of do is you play with the idea of maxing either Regieleki or Kyogre, depending on the opponent's lead. And the aim is to really get in your Ferrothorn quickly and aggressively set up iron defenses, because if you can use your Dynamax Pokemon to put pressure on the Pokemon next to Lapras, then you can find many opportunities to set up iron defense, and at least Seed onto Lapras is really going to keep it healthy. Frustratingly for the Victory Road tournament, I figured Ferrothorn would always beat Zacians, but they all seem to start running Sacred Sword after JUX and I's tournament, which was frustrating to see. It kind of makes Ferrothorn's life a bit harder, but I've noticed that Ferrothorn lives Sacred Swords at +1. It can live 1 and you can do stuff back. And if you switch an Incineroar, it can actually live 2 after Leftovers recovery. So the aim is to max not necessarily early, but max at a good time. Really, throw out a few max guys or max lightnings and use that time to get Ferrothorn's iron defenses. And once that's happened and you transition into an end game, making sure you can get an intimidate onto Zacian really goes a long way in helping Ferrothorn win games. Something else that was quite interesting was that if you faced Whimsicott variants of the team, Porygon 2 started to become incredible because the Among Us was really the big issue in that it can redirect Porygon 2 forever. But now you can Eerie Impulse Lapras. There was one tournament, not one tournament, one set during the Victory Road tournament where I caught Zacian trying to go for Swords Dance, and I went for Foul Play Flare Blitz into it. And so yeah, at +3, Foul Play does quite a bit of damage, as you can imagine. So Porygon 2 becomes quite good then, especially because they are trying to go a bit quicker, so you can set Trick Room up too. And Dragapult was probably the least fought member because it matches up so poorly into Lapras and Zacian 1v1. But a lot of the teams were running Thunderous, and it was interesting that quite a few times I would see my opponents opt to not bring Lapras, and sometimes even not Among Us, so they would have 4 Pokemon weak to water. And in that, or 2 Pokemon weak to water, but Zacian's basically weak to water, and Umbreon or stuff like that, basically weak to water when it's a Kyogre. And
yeah,
so
if you don't resist water, then you
basically
water when it's a Kyogre.
So I would find myself just airstreaming and going for water spouts and cleaning through teams like that. I think Sun as well. Sun's probably quite awkward. But funnily enough, over the 2 tournaments I played, I think I played 5 Groudon Venusaur teams and I didn't lose to any of them. And it's really, basically it's Sleep Powder. If the Venusaur has Sleep Powder, then Dragapult's far more scared. They can always just Sleep Powder you turn 1 and you just lose probably. Because as you might notice, the team doesn't have any ground immunities. Porygon 2 and Ferrothorn basically resist ground, but no ground immunities means that Precipice Blades hurts if they get Groudon into position. And so I would find myself having to play really slowly with my Incineroar to try and deal with Venusaur that maxes, because I would never know if they're going to Sleep Powder or just Dynamax instantly. If they don't have Sleep Powder, then it becomes what I found really quite easy to play against. Dragapult instantly puts on so much pressure against the Venusaur because it just does so much more damage than the Venusaur's doing back. Sometimes the Venusaurs don't run max speed, in which case Regieleki still outspeeds Venusaur in Sun. And so what you can do is they can try and switch in their Groudon. You can get a quicker Volt Switch into Kyogre, and max Airstream will then knock out the Venusaur before it can even move. And yeah, it's basically just doing, Dragapult things as well as you can into the Venusaur, and then putting your Kyogre in front of Groudon.
Yeah, I mean, Dragapult is, has been so good into Sun, even back in Series 5 and Series 7. And now Groudon makes it a little tougher because it doesn't actually necessarily out-damage Groudon. But yeah, like the Dragapult into Venusaur interactions has always been really positive, provided you have a way not to get Sleep Powdered. And that's just like the inherent volatility of playing against Sun. But it seems like you found ways to play very conservatively when you need to, and Open Team Sheets really helps with that probably.
Yes, Open Sheets was really quite useful in determining how well I could use Dragapult. And it also was really useful in determining what, I guess, the 4th Pokemon should be in any given matchup. If I, noticed that their Groudon didn't have a fire move, Ferrothorn would become quite good because with rain control, it can neutralize Incineroar's Flare Blitzes and also make Venusaur's Weather Balls water type, which is really nice. And if the Groudon did have a fire move, Porygon 2 would still be quite good because it can Eerie Impulse the Venusaur and also punish Groudons quite hard that try and Swords Dance because it just gets stronger foul plays. So I could, put pressure early on by Water Spouting a Groudon switch in, and then later in the game, if they ever tried to Swords Dance, they would get in foul played for a knockout.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so it seems like you've got all of your bases covered, just like really robust matchup spread, but like definitely not an easy team to use. You definitely have to you can't just like click buttons. You can't just like load in the same 4 Pokemon every game. You really got to think about what you're using. But you and Oe both found a lot of success with this over the past couple of weekends. Can you tell me about one of the one or two highlight games from these past couple tournaments that you've done so well in?
Okay, so the tournaments themselves were, well, all of them were quite interesting because the first one, the Victory Road tournament, was fully open sheets. The Desafio Latam tournament, Swiss at least, was closed team sheets. And the top cut, as you might have learned or seen by now, my whole team with EV spreads got unfortunately shown to the rest of the top cut before the start of the day 2. And so I was playing at the information disadvantage, but the team was still able to perform. And I think that just shows that, it's a tough team to use, but it can, perform quite nicely. I think in terms of good sets I had, there were quite a few from the Victory Road tournament that I can remember. The first one was versus Alex Underhill. He finished second, and it was just like a really good set of Pokemon, I felt. Game 1, I thought I was in a great spot, but then, Calyrex Ice comes in and it can beat basically any Pokemon in this format 1v1. And it Dynamax and it has Pollen Puff support from his Amoonguss, and it was just able to beat me down. And then games 2 and 3, I kind of leveraged my Kyogre early. So I would lead Incineroar Kyogre and just start going for fake out Water Spouts into his Amoonguss and Finny. And the Calyrex came in, but the second game I brought Dragapult to get a Water Spout onto it and then Dynamax my Dragapult and clean up from there. And then in game 3, it was kind of the same thing. I had to play really slowly against his Max Calyrex because I didn't bring Dragapult. Incineroar's EV spread actually came into play and it did live Calyrex's Max Quake Up -1. And on the last turn of the game, and this was quite a funny moment, I was facing down an Amoonguss that was not min speed, it was quite quick, and Calyrex Ice. And I had a Ferrothorn at +4 defense, and my Regieleki. So I actually went for Electro Web onto both of the Pokemon, and what happened is my Ferrothorn then outsped both his Calyrex and Amoonguss, so I was able to body press the Calyrex before it took a knockout on my Regieleki. And he also went for Pollen Puff onto his Calyrex, which obviously didn't go through because my Ferrothorn was quicker than it now, which is quite funny. So even Ferrothorn can make use of Electro Web sometimes. I think in terms of other good sets, I played Yuki Zuninovich actually the round before. That was I think he streamed it, and that was a really fun set of Pokemon. It really showed I led horribly wrong in game 1. I was still learning the team, and I thought that Porygon 2 and Ferrothorn was a good idea into Amoonguss, Kartana, and Kyogre, and it really wasn't. Then game 2 went a lot better, and game 3, because he had a Ditto on his version of Tornoga, I was primed and ready to sweep with my Dragapult until he switched in his Ditto, and I was going to get swept by my own Dragapult. But, some careful play, and I was able to get out of it, thankfully. So they're the 2 matchups that I really enjoyed playing. I think for the most part, the rest of the sets were either quite heavily in my favor just because I've had a good game plan against them. And a lot of my sets I actually lost. As I mentioned earlier, me and Owie lost 5 sets in Swiss together in the victory tournament, and then Owie lost once in Swiss in the battle train that he played in. But of those 6 losses we took, in the top cut of the 3 tournaments, we played the Victory Road one, the LATAM tournament, and the battle train. Together, we actually managed to beat 4 of those opponents on the run back of sorts. So it was quite nice to see that the team could handle what seemed to be bad matchups if, maybe, you took a step back and looked at it from a different angle.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that just a crazy amount of success for a team to have in a 2-week span. Again, top 4 victory road, won the battle train tournament, and won the Desafio LATAM tournament. Just definitely something that people were not prepared for. Everyone is looking at Kyogre as just Tornogre, and now you found a completely different way to build it that has really just been destroying the metagame. And so I really encourage you to try it out. We've, of course, got a paste in the description down below, and the rental code is on screen right now. So I'd love to see, more of this team and figure out, and for people to tell me how to beat it, because it's going to be a real meta contender for the foreseeable future. Darwin, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any final words or shout outs you want to give?
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me first. It was really fun to talk about the team. Most of the time I just steal teams, but this is the first time I really, put thought into myself, and it was great fun to talk about it. I guess in terms of shout outs, shout out the Blizzards for spending a lot of money on me in MPA again. Shout out to Gargantuan Beast on Showdown, for really inspiring what is this team with the Porygon 2 and the Ferrothorn ideas. And then shout out to Owie as well for using the team as well. And, he would lose some games and I would lose some games, and we'd talk through the matchups and come back stronger. And absolutely, without his insight into the matchup versus Eric Rios, I would never have won in top 8 of the Victory Road tournament. So it was really nice to work with him, and I'm glad we both found success with the team.
Yeah, I'm glad you did too, and thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you. This has been really, really insightful. I mean, I imagine after listening to this, you could pick up the team and then use it too, just like immediately. So yeah, thank you so much, and until next time, we'll see you all later.
Thank you.